Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, everything you need to know about that matchup for your fantasy teams and player projections right here in one video. We are so back. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, my name is Max. I make these breakdowns every single primetime game to help with your fantasy teams and your player projections, giving you the most in-depth information possible as it relates to coverage data, run scheme metrics, overall statistical trends that you may not see just looking at your computer and your phone. This is not hard advice, but these trends are very good in informing you on different things you can look at with your fantasy teams, player projections, all of that stuff. And these are unique as it relates to the schematics of the game, again, that you may not find elsewhere. Highly suggest you subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos throughout the season. Without further ado, though, I don't want to waste any time. Let's get into this breakdown. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know, all the picks that I have for these games, which again, not advice, you can tail them if you want, do it at your own caution, are all across my socials. Make sure you're following. It's the same handle. I highly suggest Twitter above anything else because it's very, very easy to be in depth on there. But again, there'll be content all across. Let's talk Eagles offense versus Cowboys defense. I have a little presentation for you guys. 8:20 p.m. Eastern, September 4th. What happens? Dan Quinn, the remnants of him as a defensive coordinator are gone. As I'm sure you guys know, when Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, the defense was good. They were good. They were forcing turnovers. Obviously, they had Micah Parsons, but they were affecting. Then last year, Dan Quinn leaves, and they kind of stink. They create a very clear identity, but they kind of stink. In 2024, they had the 11th most man-to-man and the 10th most middle field close. And again, they stunk. The most fantasy points per dropback given up to opposing quarterbacks when playing those coverages. Not good at all, right? Not good at all. Now, Matt Eberflus is now their defensive coordinator. Say what you will about Matt Eberflus as a head coach. His defensive identity as a coordinator, for better or for worse, is extremely clear. It is different in terms of the man-zone combinations. The 8th most zone in the NFL last year with Matt Eberflus. However, the 5th most cover 3. That is very good for the data because, again, the Cowboys, much like last year, probably are going to roll out in some type of middle field close cover 3 look. Think about what cover 3 is, right? It's 3 deep safeties, and it allows you to have some more freedom to load the box and stop the run. If you're going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, I'll ask you, who do you want to try and let beat you? Jalen Hurts, who has some questions at the quarterback position, or the best running back in the NFL? I'll take the quarterback instead of the best running back in the NFL trying to beat us. They're going to do everything they can to limit Saquon Barkley and let the other guys beat them, the Devontae Smiths, the A.J. Browns. And truthfully, I think the Cowboys like their matchups more than what they have in the front 7. So if they load the box, they roll out in this cover 3 look with 1, 2, 3 deep safeties for a lot of the game. It's a very clear path for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but A.J. Brown to excel. Eagles versus heavy cover 3 teams. A.J. Brown played 4 games against top 10 cover 3 teams last year, not in the snow. I'm discounting the Rams game that was in the snow. And he had 6 catches for 109 yards, 18.2 yards per catch, and a touchdown. 8 catches for 110, almost 14 yards per catch, and a touchdown. 5 for 89. That was lowest performance in terms of yardage. Still scored a touchdown, 18 yards a catch. And then 5 for 119, 24 yards per reception, and a touchdown. Guys, he also had a 20-plus reception in 4 of those 4 games and a 28-plus yard reception in 3 of those 4 games. The bottom line is when the Eagles are going to see cover 3, A.J. Brown, and again, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown was just more productive against cover 3, is going to have so many one-on-one opportunities. And as you'll see in a minute, when Jalen Hurts gets those one-on-one opportunities, he loves to look to the outside. A.J. Brown is more statistically of an outside receiver than a Devontae Smith. That's where I think the big chunk plays will come. I think it'll come with Smith, with Brown, both, but I think A.J. Brown is the one-on-one matchup that Jalen Hurts will try to exploit the most. And I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity because, again, much like that Chiefs Super Bowl, they're going to try to load the box and stop Saquon Barkley. Now, in 2 games against the Cowboys last year, you have to talk about this, even though defensive coordinators are different. Saquon Barkley, I'll say his success was almost directly correlated with the volume, right? Like 4.7 yards per carry, 5.4 yards per carry. It's not wildly efficient, but the Eagles blew the Cowboys out in both of these games. However, he had more carries in the second game, so he had more yards. He wasn't wildly efficient. And again, it's Saquon Barkley. You can never truly fade him. He's that good. But I think the Cowboys are going to do everything they can to stop up this run. I really do. And if I am Dallas, like I said, I want to let the lesser of two evils, I'm picking my poison with this Eagles offense. I'll let the pass offense beat me instead of Saquon Barkley, who ran for 2,000 yards last year. If I can rest my head on the pillow at night as Matt Eberflus, letting the air raid, quote unquote, offense of the Philadelphia Eagles beat me, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Let's talk other data for this Philadelphia Eagles team. And I think the most important thing is what they saw last year, right? The Cowboys defense, like I talked about, they're going to run a lot of cover three, which is that middle field close. Well, the Eagles saw the third most middle field close last year. It's because teams loaded up to stop Saquon Barkley. And as crazy as it sounds, I know we all say our things about Deron Bland not being the most disciplined corner with his eyes. Trayvon Diggs has gotten better, but you could say the same thing about him 2 years ago. I think the Cowboys like their matchups in the secondary more than they do on the defensive line. I really do. I just think the defensive line has that big of a discrepancy compared to the Eagles offensive line. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, like, I think the Cowboys trust those matchups in the secondary more than they do with the matchups on the D-line, the matchups in the front seven. So I think they're going to lean into that and not really change that identity much. Like I said, Eagles saw the third most middle field close last year. Now, in the Matt Eberflus defense, you see these target rates. If you're new, this is O for out wide, S for slot, I for inline, so tight end, and B for backfield. The Matt Eberflus defense was targeted at the 12th highest rate on the outside. Well, if you've watched any of my videos from last year, you know that Jalen Hurts throws to the outside at the highest rate in the entire NFL. Now, this is not to say he throws it outside 40 times a game. This is the percentage in which he throws the ball to the outside higher than anybody else. So the percentage of his attempts, whether it's thrown to the slot, the inline, checking down to running back, outside, his percentage is higher than any quarterbacks in the NFL. In terms of slot production, I mean, the Eagles don't really throw to the slot. Matt Eberflus defense doesn't really allow a ton of the slot. This is where it got really interesting, though. I looked into this. The Matt Eberflus defense gave up the highest target rate to opposing tight ends last year. So you want to lean into Dallas Goedert, be my guest. I don't love it. I don't. I mean, the Eagles threw it to Dallas Goedert at the 22nd, the inline position at the 22nd highest rate last year. I just find it, again, hard to believe if Jalen Hurts knows he has these matchups on the outside, he's going to take advantage of them with the two best pass catchers on his roster. He's not going to lean into Dallas Goedert, who's the third guy, unless there's something designed for him. I just can't really see a world where Dallas Goedert is the one that's getting peppered with targets. I can't really see that. And then in terms of backfield check down, neither team cracks the top 12. In terms of run scheme metrics, we all know Matt Eberflus's run defense, they stunk. I believe fourth most yards per carry last year, and in the bottom 10 in overall, top 10 in yards per game allowed on the ground. They stunk. Here's the reality, guys. Eagles are probably going to have positive game flow. I believe they're projected to win by more than a touchdown right now, and they have Saquon Barkley. Saquon's going to produce. It's the reality of it. I think the Cowboys are going to do everything they can to stop that, but he's going to produce, even though he'll produce against anyone. Now, I want to go look at these past matchups before we talk Eagles defense versus Cowboys offense, the new OC, because I go back to the matchup from December. And again, you can see this was Cooper Rush at quarterback. You go back to the other matchup. I believe it was Cooper Rush as well, but it was not Dak. Dak did not play the Eagles last year, guys. It's important to know that. Now, again, go look at these receiving stats. Devontae Smith. Now, the Cowboys were not, again, a top 10 cover 3 team or middle field close team, but Devontae, 6 for 120, 6'4", 120. The big plays are there. And even A.J. Brown, who had a weaker receiving game overall, got into the end zone. You go back to the other game. Again, not one of those matchups where A.J. Brown is playing a super heavy, or Devontae Smith, a super heavy cover 3 team. But you go look at these matchups, guys. A.J. Brown, 109, right? Like, he very, very clearly has a schematic opportunity along with Devontae Smith, but I'm going to keep leading into A.J. Brown because he's the one. He's going to be outside more. Schematic opportunity to make the most of the matchup across from him, and Jalen Hurts is going to give him those opportunities. It's extremely important to know. Very quickly looking at the Eagles' offensive depth chart versus the Cowboys' defensive depth chart. I mean, the Eagles' offense right now looks fully healthy. I believe everybody on the offensive line was full participants. We can check that at the end, but full participants. And they're walking into this game with a very, very healthy offense. On the Cowboys side, defensively, obviously no Micah Parsons. Kenny Clark comes in there now. Trayvon Diggs sounds like, I believe he said an 80% chance he plays. It sounds like he's going to play. So the secondary now, who again, like, say what you will about the defense. If I'm Matt Eberflus, I want to put less pressure on my D-line because I don't think it's as good. And I want to sell out and stop the run, let my corners go play. I think that's the reality of it. Even if you don't like Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs, I think that's the reality of it. Let's talk Cowboys offense versus Eagles defense. Now, the most important thing here is Clayton Adams, the new Cowboys offensive coordinator. Everybody seems to be really worried about a former offensive line coach becoming an OC. I get it. There's a very clear reality with offensive line coaches wanting to, establish the run. I think Dallas is going to try to do that. Guys, do you trust Javonte Williams? Do you trust Jaden Blue in his first NFL game? Do you trust Miles Sanders? Like, I'm asking. I don't. Like, how can you sit here and say, yeah, we have Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson. We're going to run the ball. It's not happening, guys. It's not happening. It's also important to note that Dallas probably going to be trailing in this game, but he led Colorado to a top 25% in pass frequency in his lone co-offensive coordinator season. Colorado threw the ball, partially probably because they were not great, but you think about the game flow here, it's the same thing. They threw the ball when he was co-OC. In his one season as co-OC, he threw the ball. Let's get into this Eagles defense, though. I mean, you guys know it's a nightmare here. Data outliers trying to find things the Eagles stink at in terms of stats, like receptions to a position, pass attempts. There's literally nothing. There's literally nothing holistically across last year with Vic Fangio. There's nothing. Now, the way they finished the season, they were giving up more receptions to wide receivers. I think teams started to figure out how they could attack them in the pass game a little bit more, which is important to note because Vic Fangio, for as wild as he is extremely balanced in what he does with middle field open, middle field closed, man zone. But when he plays those zone coverages, it's a lot of quarters. It's pure quarters, cover 4, or it's quarter, half, and cover 6. Important to note. Now, Dak Prescott, very, very good against man, a little worse against zone, but we'll take his matchups against man. I don't think we're going to see a ton of man. However, the target rates are what we really have to talk about here. So out wide, I mean, these are numbers with Dak Prescott playing quarterback. Out wide, the Vic Fangio defense does not surrender a lot of targets, and Dak doesn't really throw the ball out wide much. Why? CeeDee Lamb runs a lot of routes in the slot. Here's where it gets interesting. In the slot, both of these teams are top 10 in frequency. Vic Fangio's defense allows the seventh highest target percentage to slot receivers, and CeeDee Lamb runs the majority of his routes from the slot. Dak Prescott throws to the slot at the 4th highest rate, or did at the 4th highest rate last year. In 9 games with Dak Prescott, the Cowboys threw to the slot on the inside at the 4th highest rate. Sorry, this is 8 games, 9 weeks. CeeDee Lamb is going to be the focal point, as he usually is, but this week especially, in that offense. A couple other things to note. Again, Eagles middle of the pack in terms of backfield targets, not really leaning into that. Don't know who's going to be the running back, the pass catcher. We don't really know. But Dak threw to the tight end position at a pretty high rate last year. Now, on the surface, the Eagles were really good against tight ends. They don't really allow a lot of targets to the tight end position anyways. But beyond just the tough matchup, which I do think it's a tough matchup. Like, I'm not confidently starting Jake Ferguson. But beyond the tough matchup, the game flow plus some potential slot usage for Ferguson, I don't hate it as much. I don't love it, but I don't hate it as much. So I think if you have Jake Ferguson, you're in a deeper league, he's your starting tight end, you're looking at the Eagles matchup, you're like, oh, Max said it's a tough matchup. I don't know how much I like it. I think you can confidently start him. I would say definitely check who you got on your bench and check some other streaming options for sure. But I still think you can confidently start him. Now, run scheme metrics, very interesting note. The Eagles were the 15th highest yards, so a little bit below average against zone runs, which good. We have to wait to see what Clayton Adams does. Like, there's lots of questions in the running back room. The game flow is probably not going to favor the run game for the Cowboys. Truthfully, calling a spade, I think there's minimal running back talent in that room. Moral of the story here, I just stay away. Like, you go look at this Cowboys depth chart, which again, I do think the offensive line is solid. I think like this is a good offense. This is a good offense that truthfully, if they can figure something out defensively, I know it's going to sound crazy to say, they can keep up with Philly on Thursday. I think they can. But are they going to do that on the ground? Probably not. Are they going to try to do it on the ground? I think so, but I don't really think they're going to have success. Like, good offensive line can move people, not better than the Eagles' defensive line. I mean, to me, the advantage, like I talked about with the Cowboys trusting their secondary more than they trust their defensive line, I think the Cowboys' offense has to trust the pass game more than the run game right now, especially with their matchups. Like, I'm taking CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert, Jake Ferguson over the Eagles secondary a lot. Like, there's legitimate questions in the secondary with the Eagles. Sidney Brown, Adoree Jackson. Obviously, Reed Blankenship's a good player, and you have two really good corners in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, but Cooper DeJean's going to be on the inside, probably going to be following CeeDee Lamb. They're going to find ways to get CeeDee Lamb the football. I don't think that shadow is going to stop Dak from throwing him the ball, especially against a technician. Like, you've seen Cooper DeJean struggle more against pure technicians in their route running than he has against, raw, athletic, big guys, right? I think their defensive line is better. I think the Cowboys, they're going to try to run the ball. No team is going to walk into a game and say, we're not going to run the ball. But the matchups are better in the pass game. So bottom line with all of this stuff, the game flow is extremely important here. The Cowboys probably going to be losing. Eagles probably going to be winning. But it doesn't mean they're going to get away from what they can do offensively, the Philadelphia Eagles. When they throw the ball, they're going to take shots on the outside to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's the reality of it. They're going to have big plays. They're going to have maybe not the volume you'd expect, but a couple chunk plays. That's what I love to look at. I think with Jalen Hurts, if he sees man, which I think he could, the rush production could be there. I don't love Dallas Goedert. Saquon Barkley is going to get his regardless of who he's playing. That's the reality of it. On the other side, love Dak Prescott. Love CeeDee Lamb. Everybody else, George Pickens, he's probably going to get shadowed by Quinyon Mitchell. I shouldn't say that. They're not going to play a lot of man, but Quinyon Mitchell, I don't know. He'll take his chances against Adoree Jackson, but how often is that going to happen? I don't know. On the running back side, if you're the Cowboys, you're losing. You don't have a lot of talent in the running back room. Are you really going to commit to running the football like the Eagles would or the Lions would? Probably not, right? They're going to throw the ball and they're going to have opportunities to do so. So I think bottom line, you lean into the game flow with this game. You can trust it, but the matchups, the schematics behind this are super important in doing so. And I think I outlined that really, really well for you in this video. I appreciate you guys watching. Again, if you have questions about your fantasy teams, about anything like that, comment them, go to the socials. You can comment them there. I appreciate you guys watching. There will be a Chiefs-Chargers video out for you in about 24 hours. Till next time, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. God bless.